I have three close friends with medical needs. I'm curious if you see spirituality related to these experiences. Okay, so the first one, violent car crash with minimal injury, and then another person with Parkinson's who's losing touch with reality, and then another person who had a stroke with right-sided paralysis. Yeah, sometimes they do, but also we live in a world of a lot of people, and all of us have free will. And so we're all exercising our free will choices and making decisions. And sometimes we end up in a situation where another person has made a choice that impacts our life in a really negative way, like getting run over, by a drunk driver or something like that, where you really there's no lesson there for you. You just were kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. Basically, you got in the way of someone else's free will, and that didn't go well. And so, that being said, I want to address other reasons that could be spiritual. So the violent car crash with minimal injury, I mean, that reminds me of divine interception, where someone, it just wasn't their day. And so sometimes it's not our time. We have other things to do. And no matter what happens, we still end up okay and walking away from whatever that was. It depends on what lesson you need to learn sometimes in those cases. And I'm thinking about a story, a, a lady who had a near-death experience. She went to the afterlife. She went to the other side, and she was talking with her guide. And her guide said, "Well," her guide said, "You have to go back. It's not your time, but you have to go back with some sort of injury. And we can talk about what that injury is going to be and how that's going to play out for you." And they went through all these different scenarios about different injuries she could come back with after her injury, based on what she needed to face in that lifetime. And then I was thinking about this one with Parkinson's and also the one with the stroke. There's a lot of theories about why things like Parkinson's and dementia happen, and why strokes happen. But the overriding evidence in today's world seems to be it's around consumption. It has to do with heavy metals. It has to do with problems with the mitochondria. It has to do with a lot of different things that have to do with consumption and with toxicity in our world. And so, what's the lesson there, right? Well, from the perspective of Tom Campbell. And he talks about this reality being basically a virtual reality of some sort that we project our consciousness into to have this experience, this life, based on what it is we want to learn and experience. And so I think that from that perspective, we're always making choices. And so, you may make a choice to have a diet that supports a diagnosis such as a stroke or Parkinson's, or you may choose a lifestyle. Let's say it's not even diet, let's just say lifestyle you choose. And maybe you don't know any better, but you choose that, and then you end up getting sick in some way. Well, what's the lesson there? What if you never learn? What if you never learned that lesson? What if you just got sick and you died and that was it? Sometimes the lesson doesn't happen in this life. Sometimes the lesson happens afterwards. And so say maybe, well, I'll just pick food because it's such a common one. So I'll just pick food. Maybe somebody who just had problems with choosing healthy foods and was always choosing things that were very processed. And so she ended up getting very sick. And perhaps she had a struggle in past lives. Perhaps one of her challenges in this life was to not be so indulgent. Maybe she had a lesson around taking better care of her body, and maybe she had that challenge in this life and she had difficulty still making those decisions, or vice versa. Maybe somebody who lived a life like that and got really sick incarnates into another life, and they've got past life memories, which I think we all do, and they naturally don't want to eat those kinds of things, and they're not even sure why. They just don't like them. And so sometimes that growth happens in the soul, on the soul level, and we may not necessarily see it in this life. And so we may think, oh, it's pointless that that happens to somebody. But I don't think anything that happens, whether we just get in the way of someone else's bad free will choice or whether we make choices that allow us not to have an easy outcome, there's always an opportunity there. There's whether that happens while we're still alive in this body or whether it happens once we leave this body. I feel lost in life and unsure of what to do before I return home. Time is passing quickly, and I don't feel I've accomplished much. That is a very common thing, and I think there's a really good reason for it. I'll start by saying that it's been over and over again that I hear from Spirit that one of our main jobs in this life is to reduce the chaos of our own world and to find joy in a world that is challenging and full of polarity. And so one of the answers to this question is what makes you feel joy? What can you find in life that brings you joy? And how can you implement that on more or less a regular basis? Because you don't want to get to the end of this life, which Spirit, by the way, tells me is much more special than we really appreciate it for. We see it as very difficult, but when we're out of the body, it doesn't seem the same way. So it's like when I get to the end of my body, and I'm about to leave, and I know I'm leaving. I know my soul's leaving this body, and the body's going to die. What is it that I feel like would be happy that I had experienced and that I had left behind? And what moments of joy do I have that I can reflect on? And those are really important things to consider when you're thinking about your life purpose. What makes you feel most connected? What makes you feel most alive? And I think part of the trouble we run into sometimes is thinking that it has to be some grand mission that changes half the people in the world. But really, and what I think Spirit shows me is that it just takes us each individually changing the people in our realm in whatever way we can, like planting seeds or sharing information and knowledge. And that light that we spread, that information that we spread, it magnifies exponentially out into the collective. It doesn't take all of us to have a spiritual awakening. It only takes a certain amount of us. And because we're all connected, that when enough of us have that awakening, that light spreads out into the collective. And so part of our purpose is to do that, is to spread light, is to offer healing in whatever way we can on whatever level we do that, whether you're a customer service agent or a lawyer or a priest or whatever it is you do, there's always an opportunity to do that. I know that for me, the older I get, I just turned 58, and I'm noticing more and more and more this push in me to be productive and to reach a lot of people. And I always felt too scared to do that. And the push is so strong that I can't even stop myself, which feels strange. But I think sometimes we get that push to make sure we don't end up at the end of this physical life and have those kinds of regrets. Sometimes it's just your energy that changes the world around you. And then find what interests you the most and become creative, because when you do that, then your whole vibration changes and then the world that you create around you changes. And so there's no magic answer for what your grand mission is in this life other than you're here to grow your soul, you're here to help other people, and you're here to find joy in a world of difficulty. How do I balance everyday life with spiritual purpose? Was building this ability to, in every like mundane moment, being able to find a thing that feels spiritual. For instance, like every time I have to find a parking place, it's an opportunity to practice my psychic abilities and ask if there's going to be a parking place before or after. Folding clothes can be a meditative state. Washing dishes. I know people who've started speaking light language when they were washing dishes because their mind was just in that Zen state. It's talking to spirit, just staying connected, saying thank you for being here. I see a deer standing on the side of the road. I thank the deer. I thank my guides for being with me on a very much daily basis. So like staying connected just with thank yous and with noticing the beauty of this world around you. It's a special place that we don't get to experience this out of the body as pure consciousness in the way that we do here. And Spirit tells me that we appreciate the painful times almost as much, or if not as much, as the really wonderful times, because all of it is a really interesting experience that is very far from who we really are. So, like mindfulness, talking to your higher self, having a daily time where you meditate and give thanks for, I don't know, I give thanks for my body. I give thanks for my parents. They're not here anymore. I give thanks for just whatever I can think of. Just spend time just like thinking of all the things I can be grateful for. And it really does change my vibration. Let's see. Mm, I mean, just whatever you can do to integrate it into everyday life. Like maybe even it's picking a card for yourself on a daily basis from your deck, from your oracle deck, and seeing what your message is for that day, and then reflecting on that message, or thanking the spirit for synchronicities that day, and then trying to notice all the synchronicities that you see. So just staying aware of it, really just being mindful of really everything you do is spiritual because you are spirit and you're having this crazy compressed human experience. And so if you just remember that, just like, I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to build the practice, like I said. But if you remember that about yourself, then you can really truly make your life feel spiritual. How can I verify I cleared an energy blockage or pattern? You may not know right away. It's through observing what happens next over the coming days, usually that will tell you. One thing is that if you were being triggered emotionally by certain things, that will probably at least lessen, if not go away. You'll find that you just have some emotional neutrality around the situation, where before it would have made you feel some sort of discomfort. You find that you're able to look at it with a higher perspective and just see it for what it was, without feeling like a victim, without feeling like you did something wrong. It just, you're able just to see it from a neutral place. Let's see. You might feel a sense of lightness. Say you had a certain block and it was making you feel heaviness. And it may take some time for that lightness to completely come over you. It could take some time just to rebalance and recalibrate yourself. But I would think over time, if you've cleared a block or a pattern, that you would feel some degree of lightness in your being as well. Sometimes when we have blocks, we'll have repetitive events in our life. Things will keep going wrong. We'll keep having bad luck, or the same situation will happen over and over again. And so when we've cleared those blocks, those things tend to not happen anymore because we're vibrating, so to speak, at a different frequency. And so we attract different circumstances and create a different reality in our life. And those repetitive negative things will generally decrease and stop. And then on the same note, like synchronicities will often increase because same thing, vibration changes. Some people, even when they clear blocks, they say their intuition gets stronger, their psychic abilities get stronger. And that makes sense to me because anything that's blocking you, whether it is an emotional pattern, a past trauma, another person sending dark energy to you, all of those things are going to weigh you down energetically and probably skew your ability to feel good and have as strong of intuition. And you may even be worried about what's going on too. So I think those would be probably the main signs that you've cleared the block. I've always thought animals to be messengers of hope, but I don't always get a precise message. I'm currently experiencing several birds fly or land in front of my car on a single drive. I'm concerned that it's a warning sign rather than hope, since they fly so close to my car. Is there a general premise that all animal messages are good? If not, how does one decipher between a positive message or a warning from animals? Well, I'll start by saying that certain animals, they carry certain messages. Like we associate certain animals with certain messages. For instance, like the owl, we associate with change or maybe even wisdom. And so there's a lot of different meanings, and you can look them up, like different spirit animal meanings, and get a general idea of what the energy we generally associate with those animals are. So good or bad, is it good or bad? No, they're not necessarily good or bad. They're just signs. And so in them of them in them in of themselves, they're not negative or positive. They're just signs. And so what happens afterwards, you might define as negative or positive. So it's really just a sign. And so the other thing I want to say though is it could be like a mirror of the energy field you're interacting with. So some people might see a lot of birds coming really close to their car and think, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm so connected with the birds. And other people might think, oh my God, is something wrong? These birds keep coming close to my car. And so you might want to look at the reaction that you're having to that, because that right there could be the message about what you need to do next. So if you're having messages repeatedly of fear when this happens, maybe it's a good thing to look at your overall general pattern of fear and how and patterns of reacting in life. Are you, is that your go-to when something happens? And so if that's the case, maybe the birds are showing you a way to see yourself better. Or maybe if you're the person who says this is delightful, then maybe the next step is to realize, wow, I have a connection with with the birds and with nature in this way, and maybe I'll explore that more. I would look at it, those repetitive events, like I was saying, those could be messages, those could be messages about blocks we have and patterns that maybe we're supposed to look at. It could be a sign for recalibrating. Now, that all being said, it could be a message that you need to be careful that maybe something's coming, and that if you stay vigilant, you'll have a near miss instead of a collision. You want to come at it though from a place of no fear, of just, this is a message for me, and I'm just going to continue to observe it, drive carefully, don't go real fast, and see how this plays out and have awareness around it. Because if you keep that awareness going without fear, then you're likely to recognize a situation you can control. But if you keep moving forward and you do have fear around it, you're likely to create a situation that you don't want. So be careful with that. And then look at what kind of birds they are, because that type of bird might have a specific meaning. And so you could just go online and do some research on that. How can I know if I can trust my guidance or if it might be some sort of trickster energy? The answer is it's not as straightforward as you might like it to be. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, you can feel it. If it's bad, you'll feel it. It'll just feel off." Well, that is often true, but is also often not true. You may not know right away. And so then you pay attention to the messages. What messages are you getting? How do those messages land? If they contain judgments, or they make you feel negative emotions, or they make you feel like you're not good enough, or you're not doing something right, that's probably not a guide. The guides don't work that way. The guides, they never tell us exactly what to do, and they give us feelings and urges, and they show us things from a higher perspective. And the only judgment that occurs with that is the judgment we have around it when we see what we're, who we are and what we're doing in from their perspective. And so remember that. So if any being is telling you, you must do this, I would say don't connect with that being, because that's not how guides operate. We don't always know, but if we tune our frequency a certain way, and that happens with emotions, then some beings can't even connect with us. So, like negative entities, they are really repelled by the vibration of love. And if you're able to keep that vibration going, even when you're afraid, and let go of fear, like in exchange for a higher perspective around something, they're not going to stick with you. They're not going to try to talk to you. They're going to move on. Learning a way to, I mean, and this has so many uses based on all the things we've already talked about today, but learning a way to bring yourself back into like a higher perspective and a more of a neutral space around negative things that happen in your life will keep you safe from those kinds of beings connecting with you. But know this too, that they tend to target light workers and children, especially those who don't understand this. And the only way to tune that stuff out and not let them talk to you is literally to change the vibration, to emit love when it comes around. And then they're gone. And after a while, they just stop coming. And then the other thing is, if you're really feeling bothered, you can always connect with another medium and have them look and see, is there something negative bothering you? And maybe it's not. It could just be that you're in a situation where things are negative in your household. I did a reading for somebody earlier today, and they were afraid somebody was sending them dark energy. But really, what it came down to in the end was they're living in a household of people who are emitting toxic energy, and I don't think they were receiving dark energy from this other person at all. But that's like kind of the first thing our mind wants to go to. The guidance is definitely not about hurting anyone. They tell me I'm supposed to have a very large impact. That terrifies and upsets me. I can relate. I am afraid they're lying to me and just toying with me, and also terrified that it could be true. Either way, I don't want to think about the possibility at all. Yet you're here asking the question. So I'm addressing this because this is really common. A lot of people feel this way, and it can go either way. Like some people, they're like, "I'm the reincarnation of so and so. I am Ra," right? I'm like, well, maybe not completely, but you probably have some of that energy in you, that consciousness in you. And then there's the other people who are like, I'm afraid that I'm being told I have this big purpose and I'm afraid to own it because what if it's ego? And also what if I can't do it? And I think when we get those messages around having a big purpose like that, it's definitely scary for most people. If you have enough like confidence, enough that you believe in yourself and what you're doing, then it gets easier, and it's never comfortable when you start. You have to test the waters and you have to start somewhere. Like, so for me, it was, anyone on the massage table who was willing to listen got a reading. And so you move forward in little ways and test the waters and then just keep trying to move forward. You have to start somewhere. If you never engage in it at all, you won't do it. And then you'll get to the end of your life and you'll wonder if you should have done it. But if you test the waters and you start doing some things, you see how they go for you. Do they work out? Do they not work out? Do they feel synchronistic? Do people appreciate what you're doing? And you see how it goes and move forward in that way. It's not going to be comfortable for anyone to put themselves out there in a big way. At first. It doesn't come until after you've been doing it for a while. If you haven't already, subscribed to me, I would appreciate it on YouTube. It's at Sacred Awaken. And if you want to know about these and sales and other events that I'm doing, you can always subscribe on the website at sacredawaken.com. Thank you again, and I hope you have a really good rest of your day.